picture.
Noah, let me come in. The doors all fastened and the windows pinned. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on. Noah said you done lost your track. You can't plow straight and keep a looking back. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on, hold on. Mary had a golden chain, every link was my Jesus' name. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on. Keep on plowing and don't you tire, every road goes higher and higher. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on, hold on. If you want to get to heaven, I tell you how. Just keep your hand on the gospel plow. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. If that plow stays in your hand, it'll land you straight in the promised land. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Hold on.
Good morning and welcome. My name is Sarah Lindsay and I am the minister here at the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. As always, a big thank you to the entire team that helps bring services to life each Sunday. For over a century, the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood has been gathering in community as a home for liberal faith and free thinking. Now, as much as ever, we need communities like this that believe in the interdependence of humanity, in the power of love, and in the holy spark in every single person. Here in this community, we celebrate each individual, whatever their gender, sexual orientation, age, education, history, race, ethnicity, economic status, physical or mental health, or theology. If this is your first time visiting one of our Sunday services, we are so glad you have found us and a special welcome to you. Please consider staying for our virtual coffee hour. It's a great way to connect with smaller groups of people. If you'd like to learn more about us, please fill out the Google form that will be dropped into the chat, or you can email our office at 113cottage@gmail.com or visit our website, uuridgewood.org. This morning, Jeff has a final announcement about the raffle. Jeff?
Good morning. I had to write this one down instead of just wing it. On November 22nd, we kicked off the raffle and I'd made my first pitch to you. And each week we've updated you and I've made a lot more pitches. And now with the drawing next Sunday comes the last pitch in the bottom of the 9th inning. And I thought about those pitches and I realized that I have tried to induce, persuade, encourage, and tempt you. I have goaded, convinced, prompted, and spurred you to action. Other phrases that come to mind are cajole, coax, and wheedle, shame, disgrace, embarrass, and humiliate, beg, plead, implore, and beseech you. And after all of that, I can announce that we have now crossed over the $75,000 level in ticket sales. So now going into this last week, I'd like to congratulate, toast, praise, applaud, compliment, honor, and cheer you all because you reached out with your efforts to support the society in a great way. However, being truthful, there are those of you, and you know who you are, who have not participated, and you still have time for those congratulations to apply to you. So we have 1 week to go. And on next Saturday, we have to do our final accounting and prepare for the drawing on Sunday after the service. So please think about how you can help get this over the top and get us through the remainder of the year financially. If you want to reach out to others, I can help you. If you want to buy additional tickets for yourselves and your family, that would be lovely. But we absolutely have to have all of the funds committed by Saturday. So I can show you how to have someone Venmo their dollars to either you or me for their tickets and immediately, or we can get a commitment from you, our members, to cover for those people that you are reaching out to. I want to just take 1 second to thank Ann Peretti in the office. She has been unbelievable, and you have no idea how crazy and insane this last 2 months have been trying to keep track of everything remotely. So thank you, Ann, you've been fabulous. So to you members, thank you, thank you, thank you. At the current time, we've now cleared $37,500 for the Unitarian Society. It's not quite to the goal that we were shooting for, but you are to be commended. So reach out if I can help you. Who knows, maybe we can get over 80,000 by midweek. So thank you all, and let's see what we can do in the last couple of days. See you next Sunday.
Thank you, Jeff. A couple of quick announcements. This afternoon, there's 2 different things going on. At 3 o'clock, the Reproductive Justice panel on the Reproductive Freedom Act in New Jersey. That conversation will be excellent. Please check Zoom, check the website, check your emails. The email from yesterday includes all the links for these events. And at 5 p.m. today is the memorial for longtime member Marcia Spitz. It's actually back in this same Zoom room. Again, the link is in the email that went out yesterday. Finally, we continue to collect food and coats all throughout January on Reeb Porch. We have actually sent already over 18 large bags of coats and 2.5 trunk loads full of food to the organizations we're supporting this month. So please keep the generosity coming. I have been so proud of all of you. Thank you so much for all you've been doing all year on Reeb Porch. We're so glad that you're with us this morning.
Hi, we're the Underground Railroad team, and I'm Jack Lohr.
I'm Jean Namitz.
I'm Kristen Plumley.
I'm Marilyn Maney. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action as we gather together in the circle of community.
Now come, listen, take a deep breath. There is an ancient philosophy that regards the movement of the planetary spheres as music. Be as still as you can and listen. Can you feel the movement? Can you hear the music? With each breath, each rise and fall, each turn of the earth, each ending and beginning of the day, can you hear the music of life? Breathe and listen.
This morning, together, we pause to listen. For the silence, yes, but also for the stories, for the music and the histories, the words and the feelings, the truths that can be found beneath the noise. This morning, together, we settle into time that is holy and sacred, that asks us to be present with our whole selves, our hearts and our minds, even when the truths challenge us. This morning, together, we breathe, slowly and deeply, through grief and pain and truth, with gratitude and commitment, shedding our tears, embracing the call to justice, and offering our love to the world.
Today, we conclude our segments on the Underground Railroad. Our goal has been to deepen our dedication to our own USR anti-racism statement, which urges us to effect actions that work toward dismantling racism in congregational life and in community action. The Underground Railroad team strove to shed light on the nation's great stain by highlighting little-known stories of courage and import by the Black people who lived it, while centering our telling with care and reverence for stories that are not our own. By remembering and naming, not only do we recognize those who suffer injustice, but also the fight for liberation, the role local history plays, and the generational trauma that influences the leaders of today's Black liberation movements. By preserving and engaging the use of memory, we actively disallow the erasure of past injustice. And now that we know these stories, we become co-conspirators, sensitive messengers, agitators for justice, seekers of a new day. We responsibly move the story forward. And the story moves forward with optimism and hope, as in the final words of the young poet Amanda Gorman's inauguration poem. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge, battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light. If we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Please join in singing our hymn, number 143, Not in Vain the Distance Beacons. Not in vain the distance beacons, forward, forward, let us range. Let the great world spin forever down the ringing grooves of change. Through the shadow of the globe we sweep ahead to heights sublime. We, the heirs of all the ages, in the foremost files of time. Oh, we see the crescent promise of that Spirit has not set. Ancient founts of inspiration well through all our fancies yet, and we doubt not through the ages one increasing purpose runs, and the thoughts of all are widened with the process of the suns. Yes, we dip into the future, far as human eye can see the vision of the unfurled in the Parliament of Freedom, Federation of the world. Good morning. Today is the last stop on New Jersey's Underground Railroad as we travel to Paterson, New Jersey, to explore an interracial collaboration that supported flights of freedom. We also reflect on this final stop, the power of all the routes, the safe houses and monuments of our state's Underground Railroad. The city of Paterson in the 1840s was the largest and first planned industrial city in the United States. Famous for the Great Falls Historic District and cherry blossoms, little was known of the city's Underground Railroad activities. And it would not be until the 1990s that the recognition of the Underground Railroad in Paterson and the role of two men, Josiah Huntoon and William Van Rensselaer, would be identified and commemorated. Josiah Huntoon, born in 1813, was one of the wealthiest businessmen in Paterson and owner of the Excelsior Coffee and Spice Factory. His home was on the grounds of what is presently the Passaic County Community College. William Van Rensselaer was born in 1836 in Spring Valley, New York, to free Blacks. Josiah Huntoon served as William's mentor and paid for his education in Canada, and William worked with Josiah at the Excelsior Coffee and Spice Factory. Now, these two men had a deep friendship, despite the age difference, the power differential of boss and worker, and the fact that one was Black and the other was white. Records show that the older Huntoon gave William Van Rensselaer a house for a wedding gift in 1864. Huntoon's Excelsior Coffee and Spice Factory operated as a business during the day and a safe house at night, an important stop on the Underground Railroad to Canada. While many Blacks escaped to the northern states, a complete freedom route took some to the refuge of Canada, where British authorities refused extradition of fleeing enslaved people back to the United States. In 1995, a proposal to build a monument to pay tribute to the courageous acts of Josiah and William was passed, and the monument was completed 19 years later in 2014. Acclaimed African-American sculptor and architect Ed Dwight designed the monument. The center sculpture consists of the two men standing together as those fleeing from slavery ran towards them. On either side of the sculpture, Dwight captures the movement of flight towards liberation in powerful murals. Let's listen to author Raucha Mayam speak about the difficulty she had in locating this monument. Paterson residents did not seem to know of it or its whereabouts, and Mayam wondered if this lack of knowledge was partly due to a painful identification with slavery that included sites of the Underground Railroad.
Caused confusion as to where it was, but there wasn't an address for this place. Now, the issue is that our people perish for lack of knowledge. We watched and observed those that were walking around in downtown, and certainly it's a place where the people need to be encouraged. It's a place where people need to embrace knowledge, and yet they have this monument of historical significance, but they knew nothing about it. I've heard people say that if people know, they'll do better. But the problem is the knowledge is not disseminated enough. Our people don't have the knowledge that we need to have about our people. A lot of our people aren't interested in knowing our history because they have been taught about slavery. The schools push, this is slavery, and so they think that we were just slaves, and they don't want to listen or don't want to talk about, don't want to even acknowledge history. They don't like that part because they don't think it's a history of strength. I remember when I was teaching a group of sixth graders in North Carolina many years ago, I developed a unit based on who we were before slavery, who our ancestors were before slavery. And I taught them, and they researched and they read about all the kings and queens and the warriors. They were amazed.
Today, the location of the Huntoon Van Rensselaer Underground Railroad Monument has come into prominence and focus, with the Black Lives Matter mural beginning at the foot of this memorial. I want to say a word about all the memorials, the monuments, the hiding places, trapdoors throughout the state. They are the ones that we have located, but a fraction of Underground Railroad sites. I know we'll never find all the places that were involved, said Robert Craig, a historian with the New Jersey Office of Historic Preservation. It was a landscape stretching from one side of the state to another, and you had hundreds of people involved and maybe hundreds of properties. So what remains standing and what has been identified and preserved provides physical testimony to all enslaved people who sought the most basic human right, their freedom. During this very time in 1841, a historical anti-slavery document was presented to the legislature of New Jersey by the citizens of Paterson on, quote, behalf of the colored population of the state. It read in part, "We have petitioned our state rulers to repeal all the partial and all the unjust statutes that uphold slavery or impose inabilities on men for their color or descent. But these petitions have been treated with cold neglect, not, we charitably believe, because our statesmen approve of slavery, nor on the account of the interest of a few dozen slaveholders among us who are as well able to pay for the labor they require as the rest of us. Men of both parties who feel that slavery in New Jersey is wrong are afraid to act in relation to it, lest it jeopardizes the interests of their own party in the South. How can we allow mere questions of pecuniary advantage or of a party ascendancy to overshadow the great question of human rights?" So today, as our journey on New Jersey's Underground Railroad comes to an end, we honor the many enslaved peoples who passed through our state and on the way to freedom. We bow to the many free Blacks and white people who provided refuge, sanctuary, and safe passage for them to something better. And we acknowledge the tremendous personal sacrifice of enslaved and free Black persons who stood up against slavery in a state that was the last in the Union to abolish slavery. As Unitarian Universalists, we are able to hold both the pain of this chapter of the American story and current systemic racism with participating in the creation of a more perfect union. May it be so. Listen closely to the words of this spiritual guide my feet.
What I know of country. Those picture books from grade school days, pilgrims in tall hats, their gold-buckled shoes, I wanted so badly. White men standing tall in velvet-curtained rooms, holding feathers in their hands, inked words buzzing off the page into my heart's ear, life, liberty, happiness, for we, the people, singing of shining seas, crossing the spacious skies of a God-blessed land, when a song and a book were all I knew of country. I'd forgotten the capital of Vermont and Iowa, but I remember my eyes on a map mesmerized by faraway cities, towns I couldn't pronounce, or believe the vast body of this land belonged to me, and I to it. The rocky spine, blue stare of the Great Lakes, and the endless shoulders of coastlines, the curvy hips of harbors, rivers like my palms, lines traced with wonder from beginning to end, the tiny red dot of my heart marking where I lived, when what I knew of country was only what I read from a map. I wanted to live in the house I dreamed from television, cushy sofa, crystal candy dishes, mothers who served perfectly roasted turkeys with instant stuffing, children with allowances and perfect teeth, fathers driving teal blue cars with silver fins to some country club I'd surely belong to someday. Though the gunfire, blood of war beamed into my bedroom, though I fell asleep, though our men from the moon landed on my roof with empty promises from space, fantasy was still all I could believe of country. I didn't want to change the channel, but I did. I lifted the shades, let light shine on the carpet stained with lies I'd missed, and saw the dust of secrets settled over the photos. The house began to creak, fall apart around me, alone for years, waiting at the kitchen table, the last to know, asking my reflection in the windows, how could you, America? With no answer, for all I knew of country was my hurt and my rage. But home was home. I dusted off the secrets, cleaned up the lies, nailed the creaky floors, set a fire, and sat with history books I'd never opened, listened to songs I'd never played, pulled out the old map from a dark drawer, redrew it with more colors, more lines, stoked the fire, burning until finally, okay, nothing's perfect, I understood. I forgive you, I said. And forgiveness became my country. I stayed. You stayed. We stayed for our boys and girls returning as heroes, some without arms or legs, or a Challenger and towers fading from the sky, or the terrified lives of the Big Easy stranded like flightless birds on roofs, for the sea that drowned our north, but we swept each grain of sand back to the shore. For the candles we lit for our 20 children at Sandy Hook, feeling what we've always felt. To know a country takes all we know of love. Some days better than others, but never easy. To keep our promise every morning of every year, of every century, and wake up, stumble downstairs with our raging hope, sit down at the kitchen table, still blurry-eyed, still tired, and say, listen, we need to talk.
Take a deep breath. Try to make your body still wherever you are. Come into our time of reflection, meditation, and prayer. Breathe slowly and deeply. Let your mind and your heart find a place of calm as you breathe in. When we listen, really listen, with open hearts and minds, when we listen with empathy, we can't help but begin to love. This week, as we hold each other in loving company, we hear with gentle and loving ears stories and music born of pain and of triumph. Poetry that speaks to our deepest failures and our most heartbreaking sorrows and our most joyful celebrations and our hoped for futures. This morning, we are reminded that in spite of a change in government that allows us to breathe easier, we still face division that can tear us apart. We are acutely aware of the tension that continues to hold our country, and we pray for a time when, as one, we pursue not wealth and power, but mercy, compassion, and unity. We are reminded that we continue to live through a universal hardship known only to few generations throughout human history. Over 400,000 of our neighbors, friends, family, fellow members of this human family have died in our nation alone, over 2 million around the world. The pain across this broad earth is unimaginable, and it is also right here in our own hearts. We pray for an end to the deaths, to the loneliness, to the separation. This morning, we are grateful too for the wide world of helpers. The neighbors who bring dinner, send cards, make calls to support us. The activists who fight for justice for Black folks, LGBTQ folks, immigrants, for all of us. The frontline workers who risk themselves each day to care for us. The committed folks undertaking the job of fixing a broken government. We're grateful for those who live their lives from a place of love, believing in what is possible even when they face doubts, and pressing forward to build a world in which all our stories and music and truth is told and held and honored with love. May we be part of building that world, and may we move ever closer to it with each passing day. So may it be. Amen.
I'm a traveling to the grave. I'm a traveling to the grave, my Lord. I'm a traveling to the grave for to lay this body down. Come I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long, children. Been in the storm so long. Oh, give me little time to pray. Now let me tell you, brother, how I come along. Oh, give me little time to pray. With a bowed down head and a broken heart, oh, give me little time to pray. I've been in the storm so long, been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long. Oh, give me little time to pray. Oh, give me little time to pray. Now let me tell you, sister, how I come along. Oh, give me little time to pray. With a bowed down head and an aching heart, oh, give me little time to pray. I ain't got weary yet. I ain't got weary yet. I've been in the wilderness a mighty long time, and I ain't got weary yet. Oh, give me little time to pray. Lord,
So today, on this last stop on the Underground Railroad, let's hear from Jackie and Elijah Grossman and Kristen Plumley, who will share just a little bit about the Underground Railroad series and how it's impacted them.
I thought it was interesting to learn about the Underground Railroad in New Jersey. Like, I learned about it before, but like, I never knew it was actually in New Jersey.
And I agree that all those parts were very interesting. And I think part of what was important is something that Reverend Sarah talked about, which is being intentional about choosing which stories we tell and which ones we focus on going forward. Like, whose story do we focus on? And kind of learning about some of the history that we weren't taught and were not the focus. And especially now, when we're looking around the world and thinking, or looking around our country and looking at statues, and then there was a street sign that honor certain people in certain ways, but rethinking what that means and going forward for ourselves. I thought that was really important, and it felt good and important that our service would focus on that.
Good morning, I'm Kristen Plumley. Many years ago when Jeff and I lived in Brooklyn, this was before we had kids, I was at a performance one night with a black friend of mine. We were in Manhattan. And when we came out, it was pretty late, so I was getting a cab to go home. And he said goodnight, and he started walking off toward the subway. And I said, "Where are you going? Why don't you take a cab too?" And he looked at me and said, "Kristen, I can't get a cab at midnight." And it never even occurred to me that a black person would have trouble getting a cab late at night. So working on the Underground Railroad, I've had some of these same, realizations. I never knew that the Underground Railroad operated this far north. I had no idea that New Jersey was the last state to have slaves. I had no idea that when I would sing a spiritual in, a church setting or a concert setting, that might be seen as misappropriation. I think of myself as a fairly intelligent person and tuned in to how people feel and how they might think. But all of these incidents and other things that have been going on in the country in the past year involving racism have really made me realize, wow, there's a lot that I don't know. And so being on this committee, working on the Underground Railroad series, has helped to open my eyes to even more things. It's been a little shocking to me, but it's been a good thing, because now I think I can put myself in other people's shoes a little bit more.
Good morning. I'm Don Campolo, a member of the Board of Trustees. Every Sunday that we gather, we ask for an offering to support the work of this congregation. Our mission here at USR is to grow in mind and spirit, to act with a love for justice, and to transform ourselves and the world. This work never stops, and it is work that must be supported by our time, our talents, and our material support. Thank you for being a part of this community and bringing your open hearts and open minds along with your helping hands and your generous offerings. You make this community what it is, and you ensure that work of this congregation can continue for generations to come. On your screen, you will see the instructions for how to give. Every contribution helps us create a more welcoming and a better world for all, so please give generously. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. That morning, Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. You may talk about your king of Gideon, you may talk about your man of Saul. There ain't none like good old Joshua at the battle of Jericho. Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down. Up to the wall of Jericho, he marched with spear in hand. Go below them, ran home to Joshua cried, 'cause the battle is in my hand. Then the lamb she-bulls begin to blow, and the trumpets begin to sound. And Joshua commanded the children to shout, and the walls come tumbling down. That morning Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, Jericho, Jericho. Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down, 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 down.
When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
In his poem, Not Chosen, for the inauguration years ago, Richard Blanco wrote, "But home was home. I dusted off the secrets, cleaned up the lies, nailed the creaky floors down, set a fire, and sat with history books I'd never opened, listened to songs I'd never played, pulled out the old map from a dark drawer, redrew it with more colors, less lines." When we decided to do our series on the Underground Railroad, we considered what it might mean for a team of white researchers and presenters to offer these stories to a largely white congregation. Would this be an act of appropriation itself? Would the sharing of these stories somehow provide an out from doing the work of racial justice now? There were a lot of questions. But ultimately, the purpose of the project shone through: to speak names, to tell stories, to bring back into our conscious memory the work of those who saved lives generations ago, to do the work of sitting with history books we never opened, listening to songs we had never played, and redrawing our shared history. The work of memory, of storytelling, and of history is, the Nelson Mandela Foundation tells us, the work of being human. They write, "Everyone, in a sense, is a memory worker, for the calling to do memory work is arguably a fundamental human calling. Of course, there are formal practitioners, the archivists, museologists, storytellers, anthropologists, historians, researchers, archaeologists, pathologists, and so on. By memory worker, here we mean anyone exploring, engaging, and using memory in endeavors to reckon with past human rights violations, injustices, violent conflict, or war." We've been engaging in memory work, storytelling work, work that reminds, challenges, holds accountable, celebrates, and hopefully, ultimately, helps to begin to heal. And the point of such work is not to elicit guilt, not to shame us for our collective injustices, or to celebrate victories in the hopes that it releases us from responsibility. The point of such memory work is that without it, without telling the truth, redrawing the history, uncovering and amplifying those voices, without doing that, we can never heal. We can never move forward, and we are destined to repeat the same histories, albeit in different forms. We may have outlawed slavery in this nation, but we found ways to continue sanctioned oppression that has wrought generational trauma. has denied generations opportunity, and that to this day impacts the lives of every child of color born into this country. And if we can't tell the truth about what was, then we can't tell the truth about what is, and then change will elude us, generation after generation. The call then is to listen deeply, beyond the noise, for the true stories of pain and glory and sorrow and joy, and to listen not only to those stories we might call history, but to listen to those stories now. Because still to this day, pain and glory and sorrow and joy are real in the lives of folks who experience oppression. Black and brown folks, LGBTQ folks, immigrants. Injustice abounds. But that does not mean that there's no hope. Blanco lifts up the possibility of forgiveness, the possibility of love. And in her soul-stirring and ground-shaking inauguration poem, Amanda Gorman lifts up that we need not be perfect. Whole doesn't mean unblemished. We are a bruised nation in so many ways. We bear the scars of the sin of slavery. We bear the scars of our warmongering and greed, of our division and our unchecked hatred. We bear the scars now, too, of grieving, shared sorrow. We stand in this moment brokenhearted, but not broken, bruised, but still filled with possibility. Possibility we can only realize if we're willing to tell the truth about where we have come from. If we're willing to do the memory work that allows us to integrate our past into our present and move forward from the trauma, aware that we will make mistakes, but that we can indeed still emerge whole and hopeful. Amanda Gorman, at just 22, exhorts us to remember that we're not broken, but unfinished, as she says, waiting to rise, she says. Rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West, rise from the windswept Northeast, rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states, rise from the sun-baked South, she says, to rebuild, reconcile, and recover so that our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. For there is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Her words are what we are called to. And this is what we call each other to. When we witness to each other's lives, when we work together for justice, when we commit together to living lives of principle and purpose. We call each other to being the light, to being the love, to living in the world in ways that create safety for truth-telling, that create welcome for all, ways that will bring about the beloved community. The work of racial justice at the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood doesn't end with the end of this particular project. There will be programs, educational opportunities, possibilities to think together about our various commitments. Please pay attention to your emails and notices that come out, or better yet, join the Racial Justice Committee and get involved in helping plan and create USR's continued path to racial justice. And don't stop telling stories, the ones that break open the truth of our shared history and the truthful versions of your own story. Our world needs memory workers that will help us heal. Let's be those memory workers together. Let's keep telling stories, keep listening deeply, and keep moving forward.
Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on walking proudly. Keep on walking proudly. Proudly. Keep on walking proudly. Keep on walking proudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on loving boldly. 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 Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna reach across our borders. 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 Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna stop these wars together. 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 Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna work for change together. 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 Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Live our dreams together. Live our dreams together. Live our dreams together. Live our dreams together. Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving forward. 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 Never turning back. Never turning back. Never turning back. Never
We extinguish this flame, but may the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action burn bright in our hearts until we are together again. And may our technology be more successful. No matter how hard the stories and music are to hear, may we never stop listening. No matter how challenging the road ahead, may we never stop moving forward. And no matter how deep the night, may we never stop being the light and bringing the love. So may it be.